Professor Brahmachari will be leaving us now. There are, I see, quite a few hands. I don't know if time will permit us to. What I'll do is I'll take about 4 or 5 questions and then we'll get the panelists to reply to them. Okay, I don't know where to begin. All right, I'll start with you, sir, and then I'll go there again.
Thank you. My name is Professor Kang. I'm Vice Chancellor of Punjab Agricultural University. Question about drought year 2009. I believe Mr. Vatsu referred to drought. And I believe that production may have been more than that was in previous year. However, there was an illusion of climate resiliency. Just like the American economy could have given you illusion of prosperity a few years ago, I think this was an illusion of climate resiliency. Because the states of Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, they are mostly irrigated. So we use most of our water, underground water. So I don't believe that it was sustainable. We may have achieved production, but we did not have resilience. Thank you.
Okay. Any question on this related issue on water, drought? Yes, please.
On water specifically, one big area, one big policy gap is this whole groundwater extraction bit, and that Mr. Singh also alluded to. Now, in terms of filling that policy gap, what are the measures that you're thinking of? You talked about energy, or you talked about water conservation or increasing water conservation, but what are the specific policy measures to fill the groundwater gap?
All right.
That's one. The other part is that when we talk about water or a resource like water, which is essential for survival, what are we thinking in terms of there are differential impacts of climate change and there are differential responsibilities, but there are also differential resources and needs are differential. People need water for survival, and there are people in this country who probably cannot compete with a certain section of society for that same water. They can be outpriced. Are you not going to give them water then?
Okay.
What's the framework?
Your name, sir, once again?
My name is Raman Mehta.
Okay. I understand there are some people in cities whose toilets flush out more water than people use, in weeks.
Sure. So charge those people who flush water and waste it. But what about people who don't get enough water to drink?
Right. Any other question relating to water specifically from those? Yes, please.
Yes. So I'm Dr. Kimoti. I'm from Uttarakhand. I just want related to my question related to water policy. What I feel that there is no water policy, especially if you can see some of the Himalayan states, because we are trying, our state is trying to develop the water policy, but when we requested to other states, Himachal and northeastern part, then in Jammu and Kashmir, then we found that there is no water policy. Very important part today is that there is origin of river system from Himalayan areas, but there is also the extraction of the water in the Himalayan areas. I am very much right that there is still need for the groundwater exploration policies and policies especially for the Himalayan regions, which is need. And second part is, sir, what I feel that the central government has to really give the policy framework. So the state government has to follow that framework, and this is one of the limitations where the state is not gearing up to frame out the water policy.
Okay. Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Dhruv Vijay Singh to react first, and then Mr. Basu can add to what has been said.
The first thing which was mentioned is about groundwater, and that we don't have a specific policy for it. You'd be surprised to know that 90% of all irrigation is based on groundwater, and only 10% comes from other sources like dams, etc., etc. So for us, groundwater is a very important asset. We have a central groundwater board, and it's already completed mapping of the entire water table as far as the country is concerned. So we have a very rough idea, or not rough, we have a very good idea as to what the water table is like, what is there. And we are aware that it is fast depleting. Our water policy, we have a national water policy, which lays out that the groundwater has to be conserved, has to be recharged. This, in very short, I'm telling you what our policy is. And the exploitation has to be controlled. This, I think, are the three basic frameworks of that policy. We are encouraging state governments to come, we'll give the whole money and they can set up recharge structures anywhere they want in the state. You'd be surprised, up till now, I think only one state government has come, and I think that is Uttar Pradesh, which is setting it up in central parks as a demonstration effect. Other state governments we've had no response from. We are giving money to people who would recharge. We are trying to encourage that no building plan will be passed unless there is recharge. And we are saying that you cannot extract groundwater, especially where it is a community issue, where the whole community is dependent on it without taking due permissions. But leakages happen not on the ground, they happen because a lot of people ignore the law. They've put up tube wells illegally. We try and tell the state governments to take action. Hopefully we would be in a better position, and I think that's where, as far as groundwater is concerned. You put a second point that if you price water, then the poor would perhaps be left out. Okay, if you price it at a very nominal price and charge as per usage, say as per electricity, as electricity does, then the people who are rich would tend to run air conditioners like they do with electricity, or whatever they want with the water, because they can afford to pay. And the poor would only utilize as much as was required by them. That seems at the moment the system which is evident all over the world. We have another system, which WASMO, there's a group of people in Gujarat who, it's the local NGOs and societies, they've got together 4-5 villages, and what they've done is that within that small area, maybe it's like a taluk or it's like a small sub-district, they've identified the water bodies. They've set up what is called a water committee in each village. And that water committee has gone house to house and decided, okay, that this is the amount of water you need. You have one child, you have one cow, and you have this much paddy land or whatever. And it's by consensus. They are then given their allocation of water, and the money is collecting accordingly. They're doing very well. They just got an award from the Commonwealth Institute of Public Administration saying that this is one of the better practices which has been followed. That, I think, is something which can be looked at, especially in communities. As far as the Himalayan region is concerned, the gentleman had brought this out. There is a lot of water available. There is a lot of hydro potential also there. There are a lot of fast flowing rivers which create the potential for hydro. We have a small canal system, but we are dependent on states to let us know as to which particular area they would like to develop the water potential. As such, the state seems to have focused more on power sector. We have a problem, in fact, all over India. The amount of money which is going into irrigations and canals is minuscule. Even in rich states like Punjab, they have in a way for the last 5-6 years stopped spending any money on the irrigation sector. I don't know why that is. The canals are falling into disuse. They're not wanting to spend any money there. So in fact, we had to step in with a huge project where we're giving states full support for any irrigation project they want to take up, for any maintenance work they want to do, for any repair work they want to do. Because if we depend on the states, then the irrigation potential or the irrigation network of the country will just collapse. Last reply, there was that the center has not given any directions to state governments. There is a national water policy, and if you would like, I'll send you a copy of it. It also tells states as to what they should have in their policy, what ecological concerns there should be, what hydrological concerns should be, what the seismicological concerns should be. All the aspects have been put in there, and if I'll send you a copy, please have a look at it. Maybe that can act as a guidance for your state policy. Thank you.
Mr. Basu, would you like to add anything on this specific point about whether this whole illusion of climate resiliency that we have on this?
But if before that, Parunja, if you permit, lady there had asked about what are we at all thinking of protecting the farmers' varieties and what is the policy doing. I think that really didn't get very clearly answered. So I would like to just, for information, Madam, what we have is the Plant Varieties Rights and Farmers' Rights Act. You are very well aware. The varieties are protected. Anyone can come and register it and claim right for that variety. Secondly, of course, you would be knowing that the NBPGR, which is our organization under ICAR, they have a huge bank of different kinds of varieties running into thousands of varieties they have. So nothing is getting lost. I mean, I just wanted to mention that there are measures which will protect the varieties that India had. The second question is more relevant. You asked, are we forcing down the throats of the farmers certain varieties and which will slowly push out their indigenous varieties? Two things on this count. One is, my experience in the field and talking to the farmers have educated me that they are very intelligent. I mean, they know what they are doing. In one place in Chhattisgarh, the farmer said he is actually growing 5-6 varieties, so that for the primarily the reason that he is hedging his risk. So if there is a temperature rise, one variety gives a lower yield, some other variety gives a higher yield. And as a policy, the agriculture commissioner and whosoever of us who go to the field and talk to the farmers, we are propagating it as a policy. Please ask the farmer not to go for one particular variety for the whole land that he has, but mix it up with different varieties, especially keeping this climate change view in mind. So I thought I'll just inform you. You must be knowing much of it, but I thought since it was not answered, I thought I'll raise it. Now on the question of drought, I think I was slightly misunderstood. I didn't say that we have developed a system which is climate resilient. Impossible thing to say for Agriculture Secretary today. What I said was that the policies have been oriented towards adaptation to climate change, and I saw in the 2009 drought a glimpse of what can be done if you are alert to the issues of climate change and if you educate the farmers in time. First of all, advisories on meteorology, which I mentioned, that was very helpful. Didn't used to happen 10 years back. I was in the field as Relief Commissioner in Bihar, as a collector 20-30 years back. So that is a big change. The advisories on meteorological situations that might arise. Secondly, there was huge sections of farmers who quickly switched to less water consuming crops in places like Bihar, in places like Jharkhand, and they got at least something out of it. I totally agree with you. Punjab and Haryana saved their crops by drawing more water from the groundwater. Fair enough. So on that, in fact, I would like to also slightly differ with Gopal on this. Now 334 districts in the country is not all districts which have low yield. So it's not really true. So therefore I like to believe that we have seen some amount of use of knowledge by the farmers in last year's drought to do that. And to answer you, sir, what we did is, as you are well aware, I'm sure, that we had a complete study on the water and power input and other inputs. As a result of that, we are now having a policy thrust to move to the east, because we know that Punjab and Haryana is getting groundwater depletion. There is excess of water in the east waiting to be tapped. Productivities are low. So there is this announcement and this program which is already rolled out this year in the 6 eastern states of Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Bengal, Assam and UP and Chhattisgarh, where we are concentrating on how to bring up productivity so that we can ease Punjab on producing products or crops which are water guzzling. So that is the broad shift of policy that is taking place as a lesson learned from such situations that we see. And lastly, if you see the 202 drought data and the drop in production and productivity and compare it with the 209 data, you will definitely see a distinct shift statistically, which is recognized by even the Planning Commission experts in the midterm appraisal report. They say that it is a result of the intervention that there is a slight shift. I am not claiming that we have solved the problem of climate change.
All right, thank you. We'll get a few brief questions. We are running out of time. It's almost 1 o'clock. So please keep your questions very brief. I see many hands. Maybe we'll take 2 from here and 2 from there and 1 from there perhaps. Yes, please go. Short, pointed questions, please.
I'm Professor Madhulika Agarwal from Banaras Hindu University. My question is with Mr. Basu. Under the climate change scenario, there are a lot of implications related to pest and pathogen attack on these crops. So we are primarily discussing here the water or other aspects, but not at all on the pest and pathogen.
All right. Okay. A question from there at the back. Yes, please. Quickly, please.
My question from the NAPCC Foundation. My question is for Mr. Gopalakrishnan. There is a tendency to look at the missions in a compartmentalized way. It comes with a baggage if you look into that way. Is there any strategic thinking in terms of bringing synergy between these missions? If so, how does it happen at the mission level and at the implementation level and the ground level?
All right. Yes, this lady here, please.
It's a connected question in that sense to Mr. Gopalakrishnan. I am Zeenat Niazi. I work with Development Alternatives. And the question that I want to pose before you is specifically when you talk about, on one hand, the mission that looks at improving soil fertility in agriculture. On the other hand, we look at the Habitat mission, which is only looking at energies in housing in the urban area or energies in buildings in the urban area. It doesn't look at the energy cost of the infrastructure or the building materials that are going to be creating a huge competition to the soils and water resources for that matter. And the point that here I would like to emphasize is that most of this infrastructure is going to come about in the rural areas. What is therefore the Habitat mission going to contribute towards low embodied energy and low resource intensive materials for infrastructure that will come about?
Okay, the gentleman at the back over there.
60% farmers dependent on rain-fed agriculture. The remaining 40%, we've already heard that that's also under stress. Now, given the fact that water is the single most important variable in agriculture, if there's any change in the climate, the ones who are dependent on rain-fed agriculture are going to be hit the worst. Why is it that there's been no mention at all of what is specifically planned for rain-fed agriculture given climate change?
Okay. This lady here, please.
Yes, I'm Lisa Emberson from the Stockholm Environment Institute in the UK. I also had a question about the integration of the missions. We've talked a lot about the impacts of climate change on agriculture. I just wondered if there was any consideration about the impacts of some of the climate change gases directly on agriculture as opposed to actually mediated through climate change. So, for example, ground level ozone having impacts of 20 to 30% yield losses on agriculture across India.
Okay. I am apologizing to all the people who still have their hands raised. I mean, I was supposed to wind up at this particular point of time. All I can suggest is these gentlemen hopefully will not run away immediately after this. You can collar them over dinner and, ask them the questions. But I'll ask Mr. Gopalakrishnan to respond to the questions that have been raised. And I'm going to ask after that Dr. Swaminathan to make his closing comments.
The question about missions being compartmentalized. Well, in fact, they are really not so compartmentalized. Some of them that are technical, like solar mission, is following a particular track. These missions are fundamentally integrated through the institutional mechanisms. Like I said, after all, anything done by the government today works largely through district and sub-district level institutions. Whether it is the local bodies of the panchayats, or if you look at the real big difference in the last 5 years has been the empowering of the district as the planning unit. Like Mr. Basu talked about the RKBY, NREGA, water programs, sanitation programs. Barring a few, most of them are working at the district and sub-district levels as an integrated arrangement. The missions themselves, I have not gone to the details, each of them have worked out their institutional mechanism in a way that they are intersectoral authorities have been put in charge, and they work this issue of them being siloed. That's the bane of all organizations, and not just governments. But that has been addressed. That was flagged as a problem that has been addressed. If you look through the details of this mission, that will be clarified. That's one question. The person who asked about the sustainable habit, you're right, in the sense there was a conscious, since the ambit of these missions, some of them especially which need financial support. I mean, we knew it was wrong to keep the rural out of the sustainable habitat mission. So it's not that it is out, but the point is that for the purpose of the immediate goal setting of these missions, we have taken the urban areas into focus. And the use of building material, that will all be part of the research agenda of the Sustainable Habitat Mission. That's not therefore being ignored. I think these were the main.
Okay, Mr. Basu, you want to say something on the pest and pathogen question?
That's an extremely important question. I had just 10 minutes, so I couldn't cover all aspects. It's extremely important because one of the immediate impacts of climate change will be on the pest and pathogen populations. And therefore, part of what we do, when I mentioned research by ICR, would be to address this issue on what are the adaptation measures in case pest and pathogen movements change. The second is on a program level, which is that we are planning to have a there is a three-tier pest surveillance at the district, state and central government level, and it is interconnected through IT. But we want to strengthen that so that immediately we come to know, and it has worked. As I mentioned, in Maharashtra, in Odisha, few places we have tested it. It worked very effectively. This dependence on ICT for pest surveillance and putting also the foot soldiers. The second thing, the third big thing on a policy shift, we are trying to have a National Agriculture Biosecurity Authority. We are planning, it's at the planning stage, which will be a much more elaborate structure in the country, which will not only look at pests and pathogens in plants and other things, but also in animal side. So it will be a combined effort. That will take some time. So this is the broad pathway that we have chosen.
Thank you, Mr. Basu. May I request Professor Swaminathan to make a few brief closing observations, summarize some of the important points?
I just want to thank you for holding this discussion. I think a number of issues have been raised, they have been answered. But in my closing remarks in the afternoon, now that we are past our time, I shall refer to them. But only one I want to flag, what our Durvijay Singh rightly said. The gap between policy or intention and its implementation, very high. For example, take under 5 child malnutrition. All the data show very high prevalence. But we were the first country in the world to develop an ICD as Integrated Child Development Services in 1970s, early 40 years ago we developed it, which ought to bring healthcare, nutrition and education all together. But in spite of all this, so why this Indian enigma of having a large number of very valuable policies? For example, what Mr. Basu said, the last question on the whole question of biosecurity, there's a whole chapter in the National Commission on Farmers presented in 2005. It is now for 5 years, it is there, a whole back in there. So I hope as a result of this grassroots and the policy, I will mention it in a little more detailed way in the afternoon, but I think it's a very serious question in our country. There are very good intentions, very good policies, but still we are unable to. But since number of UN people are here, I think one great thing which the present Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, has done is he has started promoting deliver as one. For example, in the case of food security, FAO, IFAD and World Food Programme have joined together now. They will deliver as one. I think we should develop some method of this kind in our own country. Otherwise, we'll be spending a lot of money without commensurate benefit. Thank you. Thank you again for your...
Mr. Patara.
Thank you, Paranjoy, for having conducted the session so effectively. I'd like to close with an appreciation on behalf of all the participants and the extended family of organizations and people that have put this together, and thank our distinguished speakers for having shared their valuable time with us. Could I request that bouquets be please presented to our speakers? And a round of applause, please, for their input. Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we'll close the technical session. Thank you all once again. Lunch is served in the banquet room, and we would like to start the next session at 2 p.m. sharp. So I'd request you all once again to please be seated at 1:55. Thank you very much.
खेती के साथ हर चीज आएंगी, गायें, भैंसें, कुआ, बैल, ये हल, जूड़ा, जमीन, ये किसान के पास अब होगी तो खेती होगी. गांव में तैयारी सब के भी हुए कि हमरे हरण करमने वो खुद हम नो है वो पेछने हमरे कोई कपने बीजवारो लेवो है तो गंभीर तैयारी वो एक है.
सिटीजन में बड़े शहर में शासन एक चौक पे खर्च करती है, यदि वो पैसा ग्रामीण क्षेत्र में किया जाए तो बहुत अच्छा सुधार हुआ. हम
ग्राम पंचायत है लेकिन ग्राम सेवक ज्यादातर आते भी नहीं है, और कृषि सेवक कृषि खाता है वो कभी आते भी नहीं है, लेकिन वो अगर आए हमको ज्यादातर खेती की इंफॉर्मेशन दे तो हम अच्छी तरह